Hello everyone, and welcome to what I believe is Inganock of Red Flames, something like that is what it translates to. It's actually something like Sekien no Inganock, something like that. Anyhow, well, it's the title of the video, so that's what that is. But yeah, What a Beautiful People is the little like subtitle thing after it. But anyhow, so yeah, it's a visual novel. I think there's some other stuff involved, like non-visual novel-wise, like kind of like minigame stuff. Not entirely sure. I don't remember. I just obtained the game and thought, hey, let's go ahead and give it a try, see what's happening. I'm not entirely sure what the story is or any other stuff really, so we're gonna have to go and see what happens. Yeah, we'll see how this goes, shall we? So, I think I've gotten most of the stuff here taken care of and whatnot in terms of settings and stuff. Unfortunately, there's not like different, like I can't select to only have like the female voices, so I can read the male voices or the main character's voice and stuff like that. But we'll see how stuff goes. Haven't gotten past the main menu screen here to test anything out, so let's start. Alright, full voice reborn config screen. You can bring up the configuration screen at any time during the game by right-clicking. You can save and load your game here. Let's see, you can change how the screen is displayed. Okay, okay, typical stuff. Turn on or off visual effects. Choose whether text skip should not skip. What is interrupt voices though? Choose whether or not clicking should cancel the voice file. Okay, yeah, I don't want that on. Silent mode. Choose whether or not the game pauses all sounds when switching to another window. Oh! That's what. Okay, anyhow, let's continue onward. Font selection. Already did that. I think it should be fine. Let's go here. Okay, text controls. This might actually be kind of important. Rolling the mouse wheel down will advance the text, just like left-clicking or pressing the Enter key. Okay, so left-clicking, Enter key, and mouse wheel down does that. Mouse wheel up allows me to reread text that I've already seen, which we all know I'm going to do at some point, accidentally click something and be like, shit, missed it. But yeah, so play the voice of the currently displayed line. Okay, auto mode. Advance to the start of the next scenario block. Okay. So it looks like it's kind of... Wait, is this going to be one of those, like, I'm actually, like, watching something unfold instead of, like, still frames? Because all this seems like there's a kind of like play buttons and like these fast forward. Anyhow, minigame skip. Okay, here we go. Minigames, that's right. Okay, so you can choose to skip whether or not to play the minigame through this playthrough or to automatically skip it. If you've not played this before, we do not recommend skipping the minigame. If you skip the minigame, you will miss a number of important scenes and CGs in the minigame segments. We recommend playing with the minigames at first, and if you find it so hard that you get stuck, then start the game over with the minigame skip enabled. You cannot change this setting without starting a new game from the main menu, but since you can skip through previous read text, you can quickly return to where you got stuck. So please take advantage of this. Alright, so we're of course going to go with the minigames on, just to see what the hell they are. If things get bad, I can off-camera go ahead and catch up to where I fucked up at. So yeah, we'll go ahead and continue on that. Do not skip minigame segments. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I'm excited. Are you guys excited? That fucking opening credit thing, like, so great. Alright. The clown is dancing at the edge of my vision. I'm gonna go ahead and put that there. Yeah. He was always trying not to look at it. For some reason, the clown made him recall the past. Memories of the past. He couldn't remember them very well, since they were all broken up into little pieces. The dancing, black clown. He'd always tried to avert his gaze, but today, he saw it, both it and the memories that came with it. And that was, yes, 10 years ago. His memories were now tender fragments, countless memories draped in red and black hues. Memories. A deep moan full of screams and despair. Memory. He'd been haughty, thinking that his hand could save them. He'd been so sure that holding it out could save someone. Memory. Lives slipping through his fingers, one by one. Memory. The time when everything in the city began to crumble. I can hear a voice asking something. It couldn't be answered. It couldn't be answered. His words would never come, and his extended hand would never reach. That was surely the time when he broke, together with the world. Wandering amidst the moaning voices, gazing endlessly at the tears of many, and moving his useless hands. As if struggling through a deep mist, as if writhing in the mist of a bad dream. 10 years. It occurred to him that 10 years had already passed since this fantastic city had been born. Since this world, since this city broke. 10 years. Chapter 1. The Sky, There Are Two Suns. The city's lower tiers, the third commercial board, is known as Infinitely Crowded Street. As usual, the place was filled with people. People that had once been called human. Sound effects seem a little loud. I'll go ahead and set those at a minimum as well. The voices I'll leave about there. Right, back to the game. Alright. As usual, the place was filled with people. People that had once been called human. Infinite masses of inhuman figures came and went. This would have been a strange scene 10 years ago, but now this was the city's standard appearance. A man with the face of a lizard, a woman with the wings and talons of an owl, a youngster who looked like a dog, and people who hid their forms underneath cloaks. This was perfectly normal, and the one and only abnormal thing stood at the very edge of his vision. The clown is dancing at the edge of my vision. It's always been doing that. Silence. He gave it a meaningless answer in his mind, because the illusion was talking to him again today, as usual. One small sigh. The traveling Dr. Guy was wandering around the lower tiers, as usual. An illegal, croaking doc who ignored the obvious selections made by city law and never discriminated by class. He walked through the sea of people in a reconstructed cloak, very different from the usual white doctor's cloak. The illusion that only Guy could see. For the second time today, it spoke. The cloud that haunted the edge of his vision. If he tried to focus on it, it would fade away. For 10 years, this illusion had existed within Gil's vision. Guy's. He never told anyone about it. In this city, an abnormality of this magnitude was all too commonplace. What would be the point? He's not here. On one corner of crowded street, Guy whispered as he looked at a certain facade. The greedy, Stanislaw seemed to be out of place. Stanislaw? The twins in their cute yet detestable twittering weren't there either. They must have been out making money somewhere. And so, Guy continued to wander, searching for a patient. The city was overflowing with clients. This city, its name was Inganock. I'm gonna have trouble pronouncing that like over and over if it keeps coming up. The city of Inganock, the fantastic city that none speak of. It was once one of the greatest engine cities of the eastern continent. It had been beautifully equipped to be the world's first multi-tiered, complete environmental city. Now, it was different. A fantastic dreg, isolated and independent. Yes, that's right. Surely no one on the outside spoke of this city. Everything changed with the revival 10 years ago. After being cut off from the outside world by a mysterious mist, Inganock changed and warped. Some said that the city died that day. Guy thought it was a fair statement. It certainly had died. This abnormal situation had caused a great deviation from the city archaeological plan. Trees and plants grew rampant in several sections, with a green that no one had ever seen. Everything changed. The medicine Guy had studied for the sake of humanity lost all meaning, because everyone's bodies had mutated. Those who changed into fantastic mutants like birds and boars. Those who changed into soulless lumps of rock, and those who changed into dying plants. Each and every one of them changed. By now, there was no pure and simple human in the city's lower tiers. Yes, including Guy himself. Using his hands and right eye, he examined the patient's condition. An understanding grew within his mind. She had terrible pneumonia. In a tier even lower than infinitely crowded streets, on a corner of the 13th slum district, Guy examined his second patient of the day. Pneumonia, malnourishment, and weak immunity. 10 years ago, she would have been a goner. But now, every disease that existed before the mutations could be dealt with somehow. Guy used a phenomenon equation specialized in physical healing. It was also known as cracking. With it, he rewrote her body's code. They can all be dealt with, somehow. He closed his eyes. He felt the light of the phenomenon equation through his eyelids. It was probably the first time she'd seen it. The woman raised her voice out of fear and admiration.
大丈夫。目を閉じて楽にしてください。すぐに終わる。大したことはありません。そう。大したことは何もない。
It could be dealt with. From what he could see through his equation's right eye, the location and nature of her internal organs were mostly the same as a human's 10 years ago. That helped. However, Guy's right eye could see it. The woman's lower abdomen, a section of her intestines. It was already beginning to mutate into something insectoid. Her physique as well. Her shoulder blades were beginning to coexist with an exoskeleton. The old Guy would have thought, how can she still be alive with such organs? Organs from multiple kinds of organisms were melting together. Despite that, she was still alive. But that was Inganock for you. An isolated city where the smog and sludge from the steam engines went hand in hand with such fantasies and mutations. And this woman, she was in her late 30s, with 5 young children. She'd probably completely mutated by the time she reached 40. Fantastic mutations existed with the qualities of insects, namely the shelobs, living in the forests of the upper tier staircase. Their kind had a calm temperament, but their external experiences were those of insects. Most of the time, they despaired and went mad. Despaired, cursing their fate and their mutated bodies. I can't do anything, not as Guy. What would become of this woman once her mutation completed? And what of her children? What would they think of her? I can't do anything. I haven't been able to do a thing these past 10 years. And that was unusual. The illusion called to him a 3rd time today. He didn't bring up the mutation. He ignored the clown. Guy focused his mind solely on the activated equation. My brain is functioning, the organ administrating my phenomenon equation. Yes, Guy was also mutating. Thanks to that, he could do this. Because his brain was mutating into something so different, he could do things that would have been impossible 10 years ago. Like a bad joke, he could now use this trick called the phenomenon equation. 10 years ago, Guy's brain had warped into this. Guy knew about the equation composing her and her illness. In other words, he could see miscalculations and tamper with them. He carefully picked them out one by one. A number was 1 when it should have been a 3. He rewrote it into the correct 3. With that, the healing ended. Procedure complete.
お疲れ様です。治療は終わりました、マダム。
He confirmed with his right eye. He had definitely exterminated the bacteria in her bronchi. Healing complete, something simple like this could easily be dealt with. Guy scorned himself as he gazed at the patient. Countless mutations and diseases had come into being over these past 10 years. This trick wouldn't work against any of them. It just wasn't enough. There were countless things which couldn't be healed, despite cramming the phenomenon equation into his mutated brain, like the bacteria floating through the infected 4th reservoir lake. Even for something like this, where one simply removed the focus of a disease and restored the organ's functionality, there were times when nothing could be done. The taboo infections, death by mutation, rampant drugs, and the 41 creatures in hiding. Countless lives, flowing, falling. Few of them could be saved. And that's why, in the end, this light is nothing more than a trick.
ありがとうございます。先生、そのお代は。
今お支払いいただかなくてもよろしいですよ。分割でも構いません。
He was looking at the 5 children. They were peeking through the door in the other room.
月末でも来月でも構いませんよ。大丈夫。払える時にどうぞ。
Would there ever be a time when they could pay? Too many of the people in the lower tiers were sick. None of them had the chance of becoming rich upper-tier aristocrats or engine millionaires anytime soon. When she weakly tried to protest, Guy stopped her with his hand.
構いませんから。
I don't mind. Guy felt as if he should only take money from those who had it. There was no money to be found where the needy people were. It gathered around those who didn't need it. Guy felt he should just take it from them instead. Nevertheless, he knew that he was close to starvation. How many days it had been since he'd last ingested something other than water or coffee? He couldn't remember. How many days ago had he last felt hunger? It wouldn't be long before he'd have to choose a slightly richer customer through the dealer's influence. His own health was nearly at its limit. Guy looked down the back alley. Some scrap engine machines were rolling around lazily. There, he decided to sit down and rest for a bit. Then he saw a trio of small shadows. Their heads popped out of nowhere.
先生、いい先生。
やあパル。ルポにポルンもそこにいるね。
はい、二人ともいるの。先生、こんにちは。おじちゃん、こんにちは。今日もお仕事ご苦労様。
I don't know about you guys, but I think the voices are a little bit loud as well. Go about half there. Alright, back to the game. Since we're breaking the fourth wall here anyway, can we just point out that this person, this kid here, is mutating into a snake? That's kind of cool. This kid looks like his, are those prosthetic legs or are those bird legs? I can't tell from this particular angle. She's missing an eye. I don't see anything else different about her. Anyhow, on to the story.
お兄ちゃんって言わなきゃダメなのよ。ねえ、キー先生。そうなの？お兄ちゃんなの？でも、お兄ちゃんなのはルポだしさ。ルポは弟でしょ？お姉ちゃんが私なんだから。
好きなように呼ぶといい。ポルン、こんにちは。腕の調子はどうかな？ルポもパルも腕や足はちゃんと動くかい？
大丈
そうか。よかった。
The children's smiles, innocent with no fear of tomorrow. My heart aches whenever I see them. What do I mean by good to hear? 3 children who'd been exposed to arboritis, a disease which often referred to as the seeds that sow death. Their infected hands and feet had been replaced with cold machines. Oh, so those are, not... This is actually like a machine leg. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, got it. Neat. Even now, he could remember that night. The night when he'd implanted cheap crack engines into these kids. More specifically, they were engine limbs he'd gained from taking out a loan from the mechanic, Morimoto. Screaming voices, crying, loud voices. They reminded me of something from my hazy memories of 10 years ago. But he couldn't think about that. He couldn't. Guy quickly thought about something else. He didn't need to look at his pocket watch. He could tell what time it was just by looking at the sky. It was already evening. The gray was a darker shade than normal. The smog-filled sky, a sky that long forgotten the color of blue, even before the revival of 10 years ago. A subtle distinction between hues.
もう外で遊ぶ時間じゃないな。3人とももう帰りなさい。
今日は親方がいっぱいお仕事持ってきたから。そうそう、親方新しいエンジンマシンを買ったんだって。工場中煙でモクモクなんだよ。
そうなのか。
Engine machines, blessings of steam culture, given form by the great scholars to support the people's way of life. Factory, farming, and manufacturing engines, machines that allowed people to live comfortably in Inganock. However, the smoke they gave off ate into the body. I'll research the signs of asthma as well as engine limb maintenance, and I'll be sure to do it before their next exam, Guy thought. This place is far too twisted for children to live in.
だから遊ぶ時間全然なくて。もうちょっといいでしょ、先生。 お外で遊びたい。
ダメ。帰りなさい。
Their foster father was the boss of a small engine factory. When would that man start abusing them? People would bet on things like that in the nearby engine taverns. If they were helping with the factory work, then not yet. They should still be fine.
それより時間を気にするべきだな。
Looking around, he saw no recognizable faces. There didn't seem to be anyone he could entrust these kids to. There was an engine spirit nearby. Other than that, only the clown at the edge of his vision.
僕が送っていこう。あの親方には僕が言っておくから、ちゃんとおかみさんに謝るように。
Three answers.
はーい。はーい。
And two more late ones. McGill led the three children back to their home, holding their hands. Even for just half a mile, it needed to be done. They couldn't be left alone. This city is already broken. I can't leave them be. If he said goodbye and left them now, those three surely wouldn't live until tomorrow. He'd heard that child abductions were common around here, and found it disgusting. It'd been years since he'd last felt proud of that opinion, but even so, he held their hands. He couldn't not lead these children home. Home to the engine factory, which could hardly be called safe. He walked on, trying not to think about anything. Even now, the illusion dances the edge of my vision. Night in Inganock. Guy walked down the infinitely crowded street. He was heading towards a slightly higher district, but despite being higher, it was still part of the lower tiers. The upper and lower tiers. The former was one small part of the peak of the city. Everything else was part of the lower tiers.
20時か。また何か言われるかな。エラリン。
The lower tier citizens that Guy encountered often had two kinds of reactions. A careful analysis would reveal endless variations, but there were two major types. The first was a warm reaction, like the ones of the three children and the patient from earlier. Guy didn't like that type. It made him remember calmer days, from before the city warped. Moreover, he was deeply affected by just how powerless he was. Compared to that, he found the other kind of reaction calmer. The scornful people who pointed at Guy as if to say, "What a weirdo," because that was exactly what he was. The fixer, an influential man on Crowded Street, and the med school classmate from when he went to the upper tier university. They'd both repeatedly called him weird. Guy also saw himself as truly weird. There was no gain, no matter what he tried to do. He'd just be tormented by a sense of powerlessness. Even so, he continued to perform illegal healing. I can't go on without doing it. That's right. Even though the world has changed, even if it was already broken, he couldn't stand still. He'd been doing this every day for the last 10 years. Even now, the clown is dancing at the very edge of my vision.
聞いているかい、ギー。大事な話なんだ、お前さんにとって。
He was listening. Guy nodded, urging Iralian. Arely Barnes, a classmate from 10 years ago. They'd once studied medicine together at Inganock's upper tier university. After the revival, He opened a hospital and met with reasonable success, working on humans who had barely any mutations. It was a strange thing. Among those who'd retained most of their human features, there were a lot of high-class citizens from the wealthy tiers. That was why Early had done so well. He was making the correct usage of the skills he'd earned. He wasn't wasting the medicine created for the sake of humanity. His operating hours were from 1 to 7 p.m. on weekdays, closed on weekends. It was said that he held parties every weekend. Guy recalled seeing the Miradon nurse by the hospital entrance showing an unpleasant yet charming face. He was pretty sure that the four-armed girl was Early's current lover. The informant twins said that his real love interest was a merchant's daughter who he courted every week at the parties. That's right. Early had done well.
お前は優秀な男だ。俺には分かってる。大学でもお前にかなう奴はいなかった。私なんて落ちこぼれもいいとこだった。お前は実際よくやってるよ。医学を捨てなかった。誰もが諦める中で、お前はクラッキングだって脳に収めてみせた。わかるだろう、ギー。私はお前をある面では尊敬してるんだよ。
Guy also knew about Early's despised him in a certain way. He despised Guy because he worked on those who had no money, despite knowing that such a thing was truly meaningless in this city. Early wouldn't understand. Because Guy himself didn't understand either.
お前を上層兵に突き出すようなことはしたくないんだ。わかるだろ、ギー。お前、エンジン工場に引き取られた子供とよく会っているそうだな。クラックエンジンさえ買って埋め込んでやったとか。
Guy tilted his head. He couldn't tell he couldn't tell where this was going. Just what was his former classmate trying to tell him? Dosages of drugs given to patients post-op, something even the phenomenon equation couldn't replace. He'd come to Early's hospital to stock up on them. But today, Early's lectures and complaints were taking a long time.
いいか、間引きは罪じゃない。わかるな。だがその反対は罪だ。お前のそれはやはり都市法違反なんだよ。私はいいんだけどな、世間はそうは思わない。知っているだろう、子供の消失が多すぎる。お前が犯人だという噂だって雑踏にはある。お前がむやみに無償治療するものだから、お前の手の届かない連中は逆にお前を憎む。わかるだろう。彼らは確かに哀れだ。しかしそれがどうした。手を出すな。出すだけお前の損だ。恩は与えた分の何倍もの恨みになるんだ。
That made sense. There was certainly some truth in that. Guy gave a vague nod. It shouldn't be much longer before this led into drug embezzlement. He seemed to be wrapped up in his lecture.
まったく、これだけ言っても涼しい顔だ。いいから、しばらくおとなしくしてろ。賢く立ち回れ。違法治療も控えろ。ランナーでも呼ばれて殺されたら損だぞ。
If I got killed, huh? I see.
ああ、そうだな。
At the edge of my vision. Infinitely crowded street at night. The din was more severe than it had been at midday. Everyone here, just for one night, desired to dream. Alcohol, women, even drugs. The drunks continued to vomit grandly into the back alleys, and thieves slept with their hands in their pockets. Prostitutes picked up clients along the main street. Cheap illegal drug vendors shouted about new deals, and sparks flew off the engine-type electric bulletin boards, scrolling over their heads. The urban roamers, no longer able to wander to other cities, made their usual racket, which could hardly be called music. They'd sung their sad fate trapped in Inganock. Hearts go wild here. People wish for just one night of dreams. The king doesn't protect his citizens. Instead of joy, people continue to quaff poison. Instruments with broken strings lay at the roamer's feet, and an empty food can laid open with 3 shillings inside. A paper bag containing breadcrumbs and 3 more shillings, a glass bottle with a tiny amount of fluid inside, and some broken instruments. Their only assets. There were no longer any humans who'd pay for just a song. Until 10 years ago, this sort of thing never happened in the gigantic nations centering around the engine cities of the great kings and nobles. People had been living peacefully in them. A complete environment city. In other words, a world with no need to trade with the outside. All production and consumption originated and vanished within Inganock, an ideal city dreamt up by the great scholars. But now those ideals easily burst at the seams. There were many nightmares and only a handful of pleasant dreams. Even now, Guy remembered someone he'd met 6 years ago, an aged teacher who spoke of life itself. The old teacher, who'd changed into an Ezek, resembling a feline. For him, with his insight into life, the fantastic change tormenting his body was nothing more than a cool breeze. He'd probably thrown some shillings into that empty cup. Given up. Given up. On what? What don't I want to give up on? The opium den on Crowded Street. Its entrance suddenly entered his vision. Almost like a memory, he could see it at the edge of his vision. Although he shouldn't be able to see it clearly, Guy felt as if the cloud was pointing towards that entrance. Guy knew what was there. A shop that smoked both illegal and legal drugs. There was an illegal brothel at the back. People said it was a melting pot of pleasure. The twins had whispered that some of the rich merchants with ties to the upper tier went in and out of there. However, it was a place Guy had no connection to whatsoever. Even when he paused in front of this place, there was only a short exchange of greetings with the owner. Tonight should have been no different. And yet...
あら、巡回屋のお医者様。今日も遅いお帰りね。お一人かしら？
会いに行くとね、いつも通りさ。ケーキはどうだい、アリサ・グレッグ。
あなたが店の子を買ってくれるなら、そうね。この水ギセルに混ぜたお薬の量が減るわ。ねえ、人助けしてくれない？
そういう冗談は好きじゃないな、アリサ・グレッグ。
Elisa Gregg, the owner of the opium den, providing pleasure to all without discrimination, from laborers to wealthy merchants. The rumor that she'd attack you with drawn fangs if you didn't call her by her full name was true. She was also a client of Guy's. A drug that had been popular a few years ago had eaten away at her heart. The hookah was her life.
今夜はね、ギー。新しい女の子が入ったの。きっ とあなたもその気になってくれるわね。騙されたと思って寄ってみなさいな。
いや
They didn't usually talk for this long. However, today, the dancing illusion at the edge of his vision, again, he had a feeling that it was pointing. Guy hesitated in answering. The image of a clown, which he knew was nothing more than an illusion, seemed to be saying that there was something inside the brothel. Something inside the brothel. What is it?
奥にあるのはベッドだけだ。フロイト氏であれば何ということか。やけになっているのか、僕は。
He could hear strange sounds coming from the owner's snake belly. Weariness was mixed with the calm, comfortable sound. She was tired. So was Guy. So was everyone. He gave a small sigh and shrugged his shoulders. I'll just see her face, Elisa Greg, he said with a sigh. Guy went through the door. By a woman. No. I don't think that's why I'm here. Would it be easier if I became dependent on pleasure like the people having fun in the other rooms? He thought. No. He was just tired. Guy heaved a sigh. Just a little tired. He'd walked around the lower tiers and healed 6 patients today. He wasn't quite up to the walk back home. He could just sleep there for a while. He'd give that girl some time to take a break. I'm spending money again. While Guy absentmindedly thought that, he knocked on the door, and it opened.
どうぞいらっしゃいませ。あなたの枕元を舞うおぼろの蝶にございます。お客様、今夜の夢をご一緒にいかが？
Salem. The smell of medicine bottles, a high voice laughing at imperial tabloids. Yeah, that's it. This high voice, this soft yet shallow laugh. Despite all the change over the last 10 years, he recognized those 2 things. Guy didn't express those thoughts. Instead, the girl opened her mouth. Her clear smile soon disappeared. He saw an expression without flair. Ah, he was right. That face, that expression, and that skin. There was no mistaking it. It was Salem.
君、嘘。やだ、そんな。もしかして上層大学の医学部の同期だった。ねえ、そうよね。本当に君なの？
ああ、僕さ、久しぶり。10年ぶりかな、サレム。
本当に久しぶり。
An embarrassed smile. She'd never made this kind of face in the past. Salem. Yes, it was Salem. Guy remembered. She was once a friend of his, studying at the same university. To think that he'd see her again in a place like this. Nothing had surprised him lately. What sort of face was he making? Guy tried to imagine it, but couldn't. He looked at Salem's face, as the thoroughly changed form of his old friend. Her body. It looks like a human's, but the sunken color burnt into her eyes stands out.
そうね。何か、そうね。お酒作る？君とお話がしたいわ。いい？
ああ、構わないよ。
A flattering voice, as if imploring. A voice that Guy had never heard before. An expression he didn't know was covering Salem's face, but that didn't surprise him. After all, 10 years had passed. 10 years that Guy didn't know about.
ありがとう。あ、どうしましょう。びっくりしてしまって動機が止まらないわ。まさかアリサの言う通りだったのかしら。
アリサ・グレッグは何と？
変わり者のお客さんが来るから、まずは床に入る前にそのお客さんを見て初日の緊張をほぐしなってプロなのにね。君、お金払ってもお店のこと寝ないって本当なの？
どうかな。それよりサイム、アリサ・グレッグは。
ああ、本人の前ではフルネームの話？そうしなきゃ危ないって本当なの？ねえ。
以前一人顔を裂かれたよ。客だったけれどね。
まあ怖い。気をつけなきゃいけないわね。教えてくれてありがとう。
Salem sat down on the bed, giggling like a girl. Even though she was a pro, that made sense. She was used to Salem's line of work. There didn't seem to be any falsehood in those words.
実はね、3日前この層に越してきたの。それでここに勤めさせてもらったってわけ。よかったわ。君、ここの近くに住んでる？
ああ、すぐ近くだよ。
今度遊びに行くわ。お部屋はきちんと片付けてる？
いや。
なあにそれ。遊びに行くのがダメ？それともお部屋が汚いって意味？
サレム、今までどこにいた？この10年どうしてたんだ？
He thought she was dead. He thought that way about all the people he'd known before the day of the revival. After all, his family died, as had many of his friends. They had all died from engine fires and creature injuries. That was why he'd considered Salem to be someone who died a long time ago.
この10年？もっと下にいたわ。ここよりもね。仮想の中でも特にひどいところに。
ここよりもひどいところが。
そうね、そうね。どこも同じね。吐きだめだわ。そうね。君、冗談言うようになったのね。
言わないさ。そう、どこも同じだ。けれど、君は変わったのかい？以前の君は。
もうやめてよ。そんなことより、どう？お話ししながら楽しまない？すごくうまいのよ。前のお店でも評判だったの。
She dodged the question with a smile. Her past seemed to be something which couldn't be touched, surely for the same reason as Guy's. He shrugged his shoulders. Just for a moment, he touched Salem's cheek.
冗談。以前の君を知ってるんだ。すまないね。僕では無理だよ。
そんなに寂しい目で見ないで。こっちが悲しくなっちゃう。お相手するわよ。好きにしていいの。君の相手なら子供だって産んであげちゃう。本気なの？
そう何度も冗談を言うものじゃないよ。君はジョークが得意だったろ。
Back then, he often heard Salem's bright, laughing voice. He had a feeling that this was one of the little pieces of his fragmented memory. Salem laughing and Guy watching. It was nostalgic. No, not that. Didn't something else happen too? He thought. It wasn't something he should remember. Nothing would come from remembering it.
じゃあ残り時間どう潰すの？ずっと二人でお話だけするには長いわ。
実は疲れていてね。眠いんだ。眠らせてくれると嬉しい。
そう、わかったわ。じゃあおやすみ。
ギーだ。今はそう名乗ってる。
それじゃあおやすみ、ギ。いい夢を。
Good night, Guy. Sweet dreams. She said that with a smile. Only that smile and that voice of hers were as he remembered them.